He clicked his tongue against the glass like he was testing the sound of my life and found it cheap. My name is Marin Hale. I'm 28. How do you survive when the people who taught you to be small decide your success is now theirs? They came in like they owned the light. Dad with his careful, practiced smile. My brother dragging the air behind him like entitlement has weight. Dad's coat still smelled like someone else's office. My brother's sneakers squeaked on my floor as if to mark where he thought he belonged. He opened his mouth before taking off his jacket. You owe us for everything we did. The words landed neat and rehearsed, the way a judge reads a sentence. I poured them coffee because habit is a better actor than rage. Dad watched the steam trace the mug and said, "Family helps family," as if the phrase could be stretched across bank accounts. My brother laughed, more of a hiccup than a laugh, and tossed a paper napkin toward me like a dare. "Transfer it," he said. "Show us you remember who raised you." There was a ledger on my kitchen counter, the leather spine cracked from years of grocery lists and overdue bills. The ledger was a joke between us once, the thing you scribble apologies in and cross out when you meant them. I ran my finger over the worn edge and felt something tighten under my ribs. The room seemed to inhale. Even the clock swallowed a second and didn't give it back. The chair across from me looked like it was waiting for me to sit, patient, ridiculous, expectant. Dad talked about sacrifices in the past tense, as if their hunger had earned them future claim. My brother told a story about how they mortgaged a car for me once. The decoy line meant to make me smaller. I set my cup down slowly, let the porcelain sing against the counter. I could taste the plan already, iron and lime, and it felt unfairly calm. When they finally asked for the number, I smiled the way you smile at a bad play, polite, knowingly cruel. The ledger slid an inch nearer to me like an accomplice. The house, our house, held its breath. Dad leaned back on the couch like he was on trial, but already confident in the verdict. My brother scrolled through his phone, pretending not to care, yet every flick of his thumb felt rehearsed, a rhythm of greed disguised as boredom. "You've been hiding your income," Dad said, his voice steady but trembling at the edges. "Do you know what we sacrificed? How much we put into you?" The words slid around the room like coins dropped on marble. I didn't answer. The silence made him fill it again. "You wouldn't be here if it weren't for us. Your apartment, your job, all because of what we gave." I watched his reflection in the black mirror of my turned-off TV. It looked smaller than him, more honest. I caught my own eyes in that same reflection, calm, cold, knowing. "Dad," I said, "finally, you remember when you said investing in family never fails?" He smiled, proud, thinking I was surrendering. "Exactly. That's all we're saying, sweetheart." I nodded, walked to the kitchen, and opened the fridge just to buy time. The hum of the appliance became a low drone behind me, like a held breath. Inside, on the top shelf, sat the one thing I'd kept untouched, a sealed blue envelope labeled "Tax Audit, Pending." My symbolic motif. The truth they'd never expect from me, because they believed I was still that obedient daughter counting pennies. I returned and placed the envelope on the table. My brother squinted. "What's that?" "Proof," I said softly, "that sometimes family debts come due both ways." His smirk faltered. Dad leaned forward, frowning. I didn't open it yet. I wanted the suspense to breathe. I wanted the weight of their entitlement to settle before I began untying it thread by thread. Outside, a siren passed, faint but echoing through the windows. The sound bent around the corners of our silence, a reminder that truth, like noise, always finds a way in. Dad exhaled sharply. "What's in it, Marin?" I smiled faintly. "Just a receipt." The clock ticked once, the sound sharp and final, like a match being struck in a quiet room. Dad's eyes narrowed, scanning the envelope like it was radioactive. My brother, ever the impatient child, snatched it from the table, fingers greasy with entitlement, and ripped it open. He expected numbers, maybe a bank balance, maybe proof of hidden wealth. What he found instead was a single folded letter on white paper, stamped with my company's logo and the government seal. His lips moved as he read, "Audit request. Under section, what the hell is this?" I tilted my head. "That's the fun part, Noah. It's not for me." Dad's mouth twitched. You filed something under our names?" "Correction," I said. "Under our household. You remember last year when you used my tax ID to help apply for that car loan? The one you said would keep the credit in the family. Turns out the IRS doesn't appreciate creative accounting." Silence. Thick, humid, almost musical. My brother barked out a laugh. Too loud, too nervous. "You're bluffing. You'd never report Dad. You're too soft." He was right once. But softness only survives when it isn't constantly stabbed with guilt. "I didn't report you," I said calmly. "I just made sure the right documents were sent to the right departments, anonymously." Dad stood, his hand gripping the back of the chair until his knuckles blanched. "You think this is funny?" "No," I said. "I think it's overdue." The ledger on the counter was still open from earlier. A draft of air flipped one of its pages, like the universe couldn't wait for the next entry. I watched it flutter, the sound papery and soft. Dad's voice lowered. "We're family, Marin." I met his eyes. "Then why did you tell everyone at the reunion I was just lucky when I worked 3 jobs to get here?" He froze. My brother opened his mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. The surreal detail hit me. The kitchen clock had stopped. Completely. No tick, no hum, no life. Time had chosen to hold its breath for this moment. I walked toward the door and said quietly, "You might want to check your accounts before you accuse me of greed." Dad frowned. "Why?" "Because sometimes," I said, "family lessons come with interest." And then I left them in that still room, where even the air seemed afraid to move. They left that evening in silence. No dramatic exit, no slammed door. Just the quiet shuffle of shoes that had never known shame until now. But I knew my father. He'd stew, plot, and come back. He always did when he couldn't control the narrative. That night, I sat at my desk with the city humming outside. Street lights flickered across my window like ghosts pacing. The ledger was still open, half a page blank. I picked up my pen and began writing, not debts, not amounts, but memories. Age 12, I wrote. Dad borrowed my prize money to buy lottery tickets. Age 16, he called me ungrateful for wanting college. Age 23, said my brother's future was more important than my comfort. The list became its own confession, a ledger of invisible bruises. Then I took a breath and opened my laptop. The plan had been waiting for months, like a file sleeping beneath polite smiles. My brother's new luxury brand company, the one Dad bragged about at every dinner, was technically registered under my name. When they begged me to help with the paperwork, I'd signed it quietly, but I never transferred ownership. I'd paid the taxes, built the site, handled the banking. They thought they were running an empire. In truth, they were living in a house with a lock I held the key to. I opened the bank dashboard and watched the numbers glow like distant stars. My name, my control, their debt. The surreal detail returned. The chair across from me seemed to shift, like it wanted to witness this moment. I whispered, "Family helps family, right?" With one click, I froze all outgoing transactions from the business. Another click revoked both their access permissions. The screen blinked. Account locked. Somewhere, I imagined my father's phone buzzing. My brother's grin curdling as his app refused to open. The power cut was silent, electronic, perfect. I leaned back, watching the city lights pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. Somewhere below, a siren wailed again, distant, almost poetic. For the first time in years, the sound didn't scare me. It sounded like applause. The next morning, my phone buzzed at 6:14 a.m. sharp, the hour Dad always used for intimidation calls. I let it ring. Twice. 3 times. Then silence. Seconds later, A text popped up. Dad, your brother's account isn't working. Fix it. Dad, do not test me, Marin. I sipped my coffee. The taste felt richer somehow. Earned. Outside, rain began tracing lines down the window. Thin silver threads like the ones I used to sew his torn shirts as a teenager. That image hit me, and for a moment I almost felt pity. Almost. By noon, the messages multiplied. Brother, you can't do this. It's our money. Brother, Dad says he'll call the police. Brother, Marin, be smart. Please. I typed slowly. The business belongs to the registered owner. I suggest you read your own paperwork. I hit send and imagined their faces tightening like a badly knotted rope. Then came the decoy call, my mother's voice. She hadn't spoken to me in years, not since she told me I should have been born a boy if I wanted independence. Sweetheart, she said softly, just fix this. Your father's blood pressure is rising. You don't want to be responsible if something happens, do you? There it was, guilt, their favorite weapon. I closed my eyes and replied, he survived worse truths than this. Then I hung up. I went to my closet and pulled out the blue scarf Dad had gifted me the day I left for college, my symbolic motif. He'd said, this will remind you where you come from. I'd kept it out of habit, not love. Now it felt like a thread tying me to the version of myself that never fought back. I draped it over the chair and stared at it until the sunlight caught the frayed ends. That scarf looked tired, like even it wanted to let go of the past. At 4 p.m., another message arrived, this time from an unknown number. Check the news. I did. The headline hit like a quiet explosion. Local family business under investigation for tax irregularities. Their empire was collapsing, and they still didn't know I was the architect. Outside, the rain stopped. Inside, the clock began ticking again. By nightfall, the story had spread through every local feed. A shaky video showed Dad outside his office, shouting at reporters, his tie hanging loose like a confession. My brother stood behind him, jaw tight, pretending not to care. But even through the screen, I could see it, that twitch in his cheek he got whenever things slipped out of his control. I muted the video and just listened to the hum of my apartment. The air felt clean. Even the refrigerator's soft buzz sounded approving. For the first time, silence wasn't heavy, it was alive. Then the doorbell rang. I didn't move at first, just let it ring again. A sharp, echoing sound that scraped against the calm. When I finally opened the door, Dad stood there, drenched, eyes glassy, his once perfect posture sagging beneath pride's final weight. Happy now, he rasped. You've ruined us. I didn't flinch. No, Dad. I just stopped pretending your ruin was mine too. He stepped inside, uninvited. Do you have any idea what you've done? The investigators think I falsified the reports. You did, he said. You just didn't think anyone would notice. He blinked, not with guilt, but disbelief that his own daughter could hold her ground. Family doesn't betray family. I smiled faintly. You taught me that line every time you needed my signature. He moved closer, but the surreal detail broke the tension. That blue scarf on the chair swayed, though no window was open. Dad's eyes flicked to it, and for a second he looked older, smaller, as if the house itself remembered every manipulation he'd buried here. You think you've won, he whispered. No, I said. Winning would mean I still cared about the scoreboard. He scoffed, water dripping from his sleeves. You'll regret this, Marin. I walked past him, opened the door wider. Maybe, but at least the regret will be mine. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. Then he looked at the scarf again, maybe realizing symbols outlast power, and walked out. The air that followed him in was cold, but it didn't sting. It just felt like truth. Behind me, the scarf finally fell from the chair to the floor, soundless, like the closing line of a story I'd been rewriting for years. The next morning, sunlight poured through the blinds, thin golden lines across my walls, slicing the air clean. My phone buzzed nonstop. News alerts, family numbers, even distant cousins who'd never bothered to remember my birthday suddenly reaching out with sympathy masked as curiosity. I ignored them all. Then, amid the chaos, one message from my brother slipped through. "Dad's in the hospital. Chest pain. You did this." For a moment, I froze. The human part of me, the little girl who once begged for his approval, flinched. But only for a second. I'd spent years mistaking guilt for love. I threw on my coat and walked to the park near the hospital. I couldn't bring myself to go inside, not yet. Instead, I sat on a bench, the same one I used to pass every morning before work, the one with the metal plaque that read, "Don't let your past collect interest." I'd always thought it was ironic. Now it felt prophetic. The air smelled like cut grass and old rain. Kids laughed somewhere in the distance. I opened my notebook, not the ledger this time, but a new one, and began to write again. "Age 28, I wrote. Freedom costs interest too." As I sat there, a woman about my age approached. She wore a hospital badge and looked exhausted. "You're Marin, right?" she asked gently. My pulse jumped. "Yes." She hesitated. "Your father asked for you. He said you'd know where the scarf is." The scarf. My symbol. My closure. I nodded slowly. "Tell him it's where it's always been, between what he took and what I learned to keep." The nurse blinked, unsure, then nodded and walked away. I watched the sky change colors, soft gray to honey gold, and realized I felt no victory, no vengeance. Just space. Quiet, wide, forgiving space. When I finally stood to leave, the wind brushed against my neck, gentle, almost familiar, and for a fleeting second, I could have sworn I heard his voice carried in it, not angry this time, just small. "Family helps family." I whispered back, sometimes by letting go. But as I walked away, my phone buzzed again. A notification from my company's legal department. Subject line: formal ownership transfer, pending signature. The final piece of my plan was ready. The justice would be quiet and absolute. I sat at my desk that night, the city glowing beyond the window, like a constellation built from second chances. The ownership form blinked on my screen. My name at the top, my father's and brother's struck out below. With one deliberate breath, I signed. The document uploaded. And in that instant, every chain disguised as love dissolved. No headlines, no speeches, just silence, the kind that doesn't haunt anymore. I folded the blue scarf, placed it inside the old ledger, and closed it gently. For the first time, it felt light. Justice didn't roar. It exhaled,